We'll talk about actually. You like working with friends. You like having friends around and paying tribute to old friends, and that's kind of a big part of your music and what you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of, fortunately, a lot of my heroes happen to be my friends too. So I love having them around, and even if they're not on the records or anything like that, just to be in touch with them is always great.
Yeah. Yeah. And recording, how much of it's kind of a communal thing for you? How much of it's a solitary thing, and how does that work?
Well, the songwriting is pretty solitary. Once we start recording, a lot of people, recording sessions can be very stiff, where everybody's all freaked out and it's like, who's that guy over there and everything. We're not like that, I mean, sometimes we'll have 50 people in the house because, as you know, the studio's in the house.
Yeah.
And we just have people over and we have a fun time recording. I think that's the way it ought to be. We're a little bit like Mad Dogs and Englishmen or Leon Russell and the Shelter People. It's just, friends and babies and, aunts and uncles and everything else.
Right, right. But then do you ever get a chance to just take a breath, or do you always want to be down there doing something? And because you obviously like to work and you like to be creative.
Yeah, I mean, between movies, I pretty much spend all my time in the studio, and I love being down there. It's not that I don't like performing live, but there's something about the studio. You kind of feel like you're exempt from the world when you're down there, like all the troubles fall to the wayside when you're in the recording studio.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let's talk about this record, because I was just listening to it for probably the fifth or sixth time driving over here. And the main thing I'm kind of getting the more I listen to it, besides all the stuff we'll talk about, but just that it's really entertaining. It's just a lot of fun to kind of go on this ride with these characters and these people. How much of that is important to you, just to make kind of a record that people are going to just, above us, kind of enjoy?
Well, I think it's really important to make records that people enjoy. That's why I always try to add a little humor to the record. Maybe not on every song. I mean, there's some heavy songs and some lighter ones, but you can't be too earnest in any kind of art. You got to have some fun with it and put it across where the audience can have some fun, because that's really kind of why music and movies or books or whatever were created, was to entertain people. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm. And you go to some dark places in these songs, like you've gone to dark places with your characters, but how much of that do you kind of like have to push aside and lend a little wink to it? When does that come up, just for your own personal sanity?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are some really heavy themes and some dark songs on almost everything I do, but you do reach a certain point where it's like, well, I'm getting a little bit too, I'm getting a little too dark here, a little too weepy or whatever it is, and you gotta, I mean, usually instinctively you know when to pull back. I just wrote a song for the next record we're doing called A Name for Myself, and it's probably the most commercial song I've ever written, and yet the lyrics are very heavy and have a lot to do with my own life, and it's actually about the spotlight and how you need it, but you don't really want to be in it,
Mm-hmm.
And I had to make sure that there were lines in the song that said, hey, listen, I appreciate what I have, I mean, if you just bitch about stuff, then get out of it, right, So it's a song that says, you know what, I've actually lived out my dreams. I'm very satisfied with what I've done, but at the same time, after a while, it gets to be a pain in the ass to, every time you have a cheeseburger, people want to know if it was Swiss or cheddar,
Well, this album's about that in a lot of ways too, in terms of kind of your love-hate relationship with California, with Los Angeles, with Hollywood, that kind of thing. Because in some ways you're kind of ultimate insider.
Right.
Things have been great for you, but obviously you're not Mr. Hollywood either. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. I've not been much of a part of Hollywood in a lot of ways, and at the same time, that's how I make my living. That's where I express myself. So I've never been a person to knock Hollywood so much as embrace it. And this record, while it does take a jab or two at California, at the same time, it's a sort of a tribute to California. I'm not an LA hater. There are elements of it that I'm not crazy about, and they're no mystery. I don't think anybody's crazy about it. But it's not just an LA record, it's, you know, a California record in general. And, you know, the whole point of it was that California is sort of the last frontier for people who want to make it, which that term is like, what exactly does that mean? You know, but it is the place you have to come to ultimately. It used to be New York too,
Mm-hmm.
or Chicago, or New Orleans, or Memphis, or Nashville. There are a lot of places to go. These days, you know, you can spend all the time you want someplace else, but ultimately, you got to come to LA. And that's what this record's really about. It's the stories of success and failure and joy and sadness and confusion and everything else about coming out here. And at the same time, it's you know, about this magical place that we all reside in and try to work in, you know.
Mm-hmm. Why this album now? Where are these songs kind of come from in this point in your life that made you kind of be thinking about these things? How many of these songs did come now? Some of these could have been kind of around for a while. I'm not sure.
Well, I actually wrote the first song I wrote for the record was actually a title track, Hobo, which you know, we talked about. Wasn't the original title track, but I wrote the first song when I was in Chicago making this movie, The Ice Harvest, with John Cusack, which is coming out here fairly soon, I think November. And I was just in a hotel room in Chicago talking to my mom on the phone, and we were talking about when I was a kid in Arkansas how these hobos used to come to the back door, and my mom used to, and my grandmother would feed them, you know, and sometimes invite them into the house if they trusted them, you know. And I thought that's an interesting idea for a song, you know, a guy who is a street person in Santa Monica or wherever, and he's thinking about back when he was a kid and his mother used to feed people like him, you know. And I thought that was an interesting idea for not only a song, but an album. And so I really started it then. So the songs came pretty much all at once, or at least over a period of a few months after I started writing the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't things that had been around for a long time, but I guess in my head they probably were.
Right.
You know?
And it lends itself though to this amazingly kind of consistent feel as you listen to this record. You kind of go on the journey with these characters,
right,
and come out the other side knowing you kind of been somewhere.
Well, I think what you said about consistency, I think that's what's different about this record and my other records. And you know, I've learned a lot making the other records. I love them, and they have a special place in my heart. But they were very sort of eccentric and eclectic records in the sense that they were all over the map. You know, I had rock song on Edge of the World, particularly. I had rock songs, I had country songs, I had spooky ballads, all these different things. And these days, I think it's hard to turn out a record like that. If it was in 1969, I think we'd have gotten by with it. But I think you have to have a real through line for a record these days because I think people categorize things so easily, not only lyrically, but like sonically, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think this is probably sonically our most sound album because it does have a mood to it, you know, throughout.
Yeah. You've been proud of this music for a long time. This is obviously kind of where you want to be with your music right now. This is like a statement for you, the kind of music you've been wanting to make for a while, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I had a couple of friends of mine hear the album who are people that I really respect in the music business. And they both said that this is the record that I've been trying to make, and I finally made it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's that like at this point in your career? Someone's been playing music pretty much your whole life, and then to at this point make an album like this, is it an extra kind of thrill and to kind of show yourself that this is what I always wanted to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm real proud of it, and I feel like we did the job, you know. You know, I have a tendency to be a little bit erratic and everything in pretty much any area in my life, and I think because there's some discipline on this album, I think it meant a lot to me, just, you know, kind of showing myself that if I put my mind to it, I can not just do whatever the hell I feel like in the moment, but yet, you know, sort of craft a record that says what I'm trying to say, both lyrically and sonically.
Mm-hmm. How much of you is in what you're singing about here? Obviously a good deal, but a lot of it's not. If you can kind of just put that into words.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, it's a collection of stories about the whole California experience and the pilgrimage here, and some of them are autobiographical, and some of them are just well, some of them are things I've observed, and a couple of them are just more symbolic of what we know happens, you know, when people come out here. I mean, I've got a song on there called Gray Walls, which is about the suits, and I think I experienced in writing that song what I hope people experience in listening to it, which is I set out to write a song just to slam the suits. That's all I was going to do. It's just like, these morons who run the studios or the lawyers and producers and all these people, you know. And through the process of writing the song and recording it, I felt a certain sadness for them, because at the end of the day, no matter who they know, how many parties they go to, or how many lunches they have, at night they have to go to sleep with themselves. And a lot of them know that nobody cares about them. You know, in reality, they only want something from them. Mm-hmm. So the song turned out to be kind of a sad song for them, like they're living behind these gray walls and nobody really cares about them. They just want to get something from them or have them further their career or whatever it is, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now with Purple Passion, most people, at least I never, till we talked about it a year ago, I wasn't familiar with what Purple Passion was. You can kind of let folks know about Purple Passion.
Well, Purple Passion is, you know, in the song it has a few different meanings, but one of the meanings that sort of sparked the idea initially was this type of alcoholic beverage that you can get, which, as far as I remember, came in plastic bottles, kind of like if you're getting a soda pop, you know, in the big liter, 2 or 3 liter bottles, whatever they are. And it's called Purple Passion, and it's kind of like Kool-Aid and alcohol, really. You know, I'm not sure exactly what they make it out of, but it's something that it tastes benign enough to where if you drink enough of it, you know, it's like you think you're doing fine. Oh, hey, I'll have this. Oh, that's not very strong. And before long, you see Jesus riding a bobcat. It can be pretty serious, but it also has to do with a lot of other things too. Purple Passion meaning a real intense kind of lovemaking and a lot of different things. So it's not necessarily a brand name here. It's it has to do with a few things, but the story really is about a guy. You know, whereas the other songs have sort of larger social or political meanings, you know, this particular song is just a song about a guy who, not a real smart guy, not a successful guy. He's just a guy who, well, a regular guy who decides he's going to take a trip through Central California, and he rents a Winnebago, and he's just going to see what happens to him. And he meets this married woman at a truck stop and has a one-night stand with her in his Winnebago. So that's just more of a, it's more of a Steinbeck story than anything else.
Darker side of Steinbeck.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a few of the songs on this.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, the character in that, the woman he meets, is a line in there about, at least we had tonight, at least we had,
right.
Something along those lines, which you get also, at least we dream.
Right.
You know, a lot of these transient kind of dreams, transient thoughts, moments of happiness going through.
Right.
Kind of this. Talk about that a little bit, just kind of like that elusive kind of happiness that kind of pops up in this album.
Well, I think that's what, that's one of the main things I wanted to get across, is that, you know, life is not perfect and it's not always horrible. You know, it's not, you can't expect life to be an amazing time with moments of horror or whatever, you know. It's really just this regular kind of life with moments of both. And if you get some moments of extreme joy or success or whatever it is you're looking for, then you're pretty lucky. And in Purple Passion it says, yeah, at least you granted my wish. I mean, that's, the woman just wanted a night where everything kind of worked out nice for her world. And the song At Least We Dreamed is really a song about, you know, maybe we didn't do what we set out to do, but at least we tried to do it. I mean, do you want to be 85 years old and look back on your life and say, maybe I should have gone to Idaho that time, or maybe I should have done this or that, you know. I think the idea of it is we got to try to do these things. If they don't work out, they don't work out. But if you don't try, you're never going to know, you know, or you'll never have had that feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a story of some sort of emotional, spiritual courage, really. It's like, well, maybe people think I'm nuts, but I'm at least going to try. Mm-hmm. You know?
When did you come to terms with that yourself? Is that something that you've kind of, certain life experiences led you to kind of like, all right, I get it now?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I had those experiences. I mean, one was when I first came to California 25 years ago. I could still be back in Texas or someplace, you know, doing my thing, and maybe I would have been okay. But I always had this burning desire to speak my mind in, you know, cinematic terms and musical terms and everything else, and I did it. And whether I'm a success or a failure or just a run-of-the-mill, I did come out here and I did try and put it out there. And then you just have to let other people be the judge of that, but at least I tried to do it. I think it's a courageous thing to do. Almost anything that we try is courageous. Mm-hmm. Marriage, friendship, a job, anything. And you know, I'm just real satisfied that I made this record about those things that I was thinking, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it all boils down to at the end of the thing is, you know, some of the stories end in either tragedy or melancholy or whatever, and some of them end in success. But it's the whole idea, like you said, of trying to get out there and do it.
Mm-hmm. And you also just get to kind of rock as well.
Yeah.
How much fun was that? You have some great guys playing with you, and
yeah.
Just talk about just musically what you're trying to do with this one.
Well, we wanted to keep a mood for it, first of all, and there are like 2 songs on the record that are a little more up-tempo and a little harder edged, Orange County Suicide and Gray Walls. But still, within that, they're still kind of moody. I mean, it's the same guys. Really, the whole record was made by me and Randy Mitchell, my guitar player and co-writer and everything. And well, I think because of that, we were able to keep this mood, because it's just 2 guys doing their thing, and we didn't go much outside that. And then Matt Logg, our drummer, came in and put drums to the whole record. So there's 3 musicians on the record. So it's pretty easy to keep a focus, you know, when you have that few people. But yeah, I loved it, you know, musically. I loved doing it. And there's a certain sense of satisfaction when you do it yourself, pretty much, you know. I've had the same engineer, producer, co-producer, Jim Mitchell, the whole time on all the records, but this one was really in our workshop. Yeah. You know, it was really our thing, and I think I'm real happy with that part of it. We felt like, I guess it's the equivalent of making an independent film. Which
you know a lot of.
Yeah.
A lot about what that's like. Talk about Your Blue Shadow, because that shadow's still casting a shadow on you.
Yeah. Well, it was on the first album on Private Radio, this song, Your Blue Shadow, and the reason I put it on this one is because when we play the song live, we play it differently than we did on the album, and I always loved the way it sounded when we played it live, and it just so happened to fit the story of the new record. And I thought, well, you know what, we need to re-record this and really make it sound the way we hear it, you know. And because the first album had a little more country influence in it, I suppose, you know, and it's really not a country song. Right. And so, as a matter of fact, somebody said to me the other day, that said, "Why are your albums in the country section?" You know, we don't understand. You know, it's like this one guy said to me. He said, "You're as country as Tom Waits." I said, "Well, thank you for saying that. He's amazing." You know, but I think what we did on this album was took it into a more indie record feel in a way, you know, or Americana music for real, you know, as opposed to, I guess because of my name and coming from the South,
Sure.
people want to put me in the country world, and that's really not what I do.
You probably had that other aspects of your career as well that you probably dealt with years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in movies, we always dealt with that stuff in the beginning, you know.
Sure.
And then you become a movie star and they'll let you play anything. I can play Betty Davis if I want to now, but in the beginning, you know, it's like, no, you're a Southerner or a redneck or whatever you are, you know.
Right.
And I don't know. A lot of times, you know, a guy from the Bronx is not stuck in that world. He can play a guy from LA or a guy from Oregon or whatever, but Southerners, for some reason, there was a real prejudice where that's all you could be. And, you know, one of our bands growing up, a band that spoke to the South, was The Band. And they're Canadians, except for Lee Von Helm.
Right.
You know? So it just goes to show you, you know, music transcends all these things. I mean, Robbie Robertson. Oh, absolutely, you know. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anybody who really loves music and songwriting in the South who doesn't like Bob Dylan, and he's from Minnesota. I mean, you just can't, you know. I mean, we got enough trouble already in the world. Let's not start separating each other, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about how well things are going for you now, how busy you are, and things seem, at least on paper and what I've seen, that you're kind of nonstop and things are going great.
Yeah, things are pretty good. I mean, you know, career-wise, I'm working all the time. You know, you got to get shoes on the kids, and so I keep doing it. I've been real happy with the movies lately, and I've got a couple coming up that I'm really happy with. You know, making records. We're already making another record, and this one's not even out yet. So all of that stuff's great, keeping busy. You know, the kids are good. Got a new baby who's 11 months old.
Yeah, how'd that change you again, going through the whole experience again not long ago? Because I just went through it for the first time a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah, right. I remember we talked about you and your young'un and everything. Well, Bella is 11 months old now, and it's funny because my boys are 11 and 12 now. And so it's been a long time since I had an infant, you know, and I was afraid at first that I wouldn't remember what to do, but it's kind of like riding a bicycle, you know, you never forget it. So it's been a great experience, and also girls are different than boys. It's like, you know, I'm her daddy, and already, I mean, at this young age, she's kind of attached to me, you know. Like when she sees me, she holds her arms out and stuff. It makes you feel really good, you know, and more protective, I think, probably, you know. With the boys, you know, they can roughhouse with the best of them, and they're, you know, you kind of, you know, the father-son relationship is great, and then in a whole different way, the father-daughter relationship is great. They're different things, but you know, I turned 50 last month, or this month, and
way behind you.
Yeah, I know. And I started thinking, man, I'm a half a century old. Eisenhower was president when I was born. That was the scariest thing to me. And I think having this new child really made me feel, I know it sounds corny, but it made me feel young again. It sort of rejuvenated me, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you're not afraid to kind of have characters that look back and talk about kind of weary, older man kind of things. You never have really with your characters you played or that come out in your songs. So you've kind of had that perspective, I think, for a long time in your life. So
yeah,
kind of nice to have something that could rejuvenate you in some ways.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm tired enough. I don't need anything to make me tireder. This is a good thing with the little girl. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved the idea of. I've never worried about age much, first of all, or what I look like in a movie or anything else. You know, as a matter of fact, I try to embrace it because if I hadn't lived the life I've led and as many years as I've been here, I probably wouldn't have anything to write about. You know. If I just graduated film school, I probably wouldn't be interested in my own movies, you know.
Talk about how you balance travel and you're about to go shoot this movie out of state with the family, stuff like that. Something you've always done, but
You know,
Is it easier for you now?
it gets a little bit easier, although the older I get, the more I want to stay home.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really happy when I hear that a movie's shooting at home. Uh, I like traveling still, and you know, it depends on where I'm traveling to. But we're going to New Mexico, and I like it over there. It's really nice. And we shot all the pretty horses over there.
Sure.
And it's going to be okay. You know, the boys don't get to come out when I'm on location much because they're in school, you know, a lot. And I'll have the baby with me, which will be nice, you know. And, you know, I get home when I can. I'll fly home on weekends and stuff.
Mm-hmm. You're working now with the Polish brothers.
Yeah.
Right? You've worked with some of the coolest, like, best directors pretty much out there over the last few years. What else do you still want to do? What other projects do you probably have a bunch of your own projects in the can that you're dying to go out there and direct, and what are kind of your goals and dreams at this point? You still have a lot of things that you're just itching to put together?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. I think as long as you have dreams, it keeps you alive, you know. And I have a few things that I dream of doing someday. I would like to make a music movie someday, and you know, I've tried to keep the music and movies so separate, and now it's gotten to the point where I'm so tired of doing what people, you know, will accept, that you just want to just do things that make you feel good and things that you really want to say, and without worrying that the critics are going to say, oh, here's an actor making a record or whatever. I think next I'd like to make a movie that incorporates all of it. You know, I'd like to score a movie that I direct and write and make it a movie about music. And I've got one in my head. I've had it for a long time, but I've just never quite finished the screenplay. I hope I do. And you know, there are other things that, you know, people ask me a lot of times. They say, is there anybody you haven't worked with that you'd like to work with, you know? I think probably every actor wants to work with Scorsese, just to say you did it. You know, that might be something. There's some musical people I'd like to do some things with. I'd like to write a song with John Prine. I'd like to write a song with Chris Christopherson. I think that'd be amazing to just experience that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they might want to rewrite my part of it. You never know, because those guys are amazing. But I sure would like to give it a try.
And we're always asking people what roles that, you know, they wish they could have had that didn't get. But I look back at your career, and you've had such, looks like dream roles and dream characters that probably other people were dying to have, and it seems like they've all kind of fallen into place.
I don't really have any regrets in that sense. I've never turned down a role that ultimately I wish I'd played. There were a couple of roles that I desperately wanted. I won't mention the names of the movies, but there were a couple of roles I wanted so bad. I couldn't believe they didn't cast me in them. And it wasn't like when I was struggling either. It was like, in other words, it was me and 3 or 4 other big guys, you know, that we were all, you know, being considered for the part, you know. And of course, you reach a certain point, you don't read for it anymore. You're just offered it or you're not offered it, and you know, your agents may go out and chase it for you or whatever. But there are 2 movies that I can think of where I thought, if they don't cast me in this, they're morons, you know, and I got to have this part. And both of them, thank God, just turned out horribly. And I was so happy I didn't do them, you know. But in the beginning, I was convinced that these were like the 2 roles of all time, that they were going to be amazing, and they were. Turned out to not be very good, and it was one of those things where you kind of, you know, got by with that. You know?
Right. Yeah. Things work out that way.
Yeah.
Okay, just get one more little thing here. But you mentioned the acceptance. So you're not even thinking about that anymore in terms of acceptance and what critics say about actor, musician. Have you got over that an album ago? Is that like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of over that now.
Yeah.
I mean, now I love doing it so much. I don't care. I mean, they can say what they want, and we have enough people who love it, you know. So, the thing is if I sell 30 or 40,000 records and the people love those records when they buy them, and I have a cult following of people, that's enough for me in music. If I wanted to sell 5 million records, I'd probably be in trouble, but I don't really care about that. I wish 5 million people would hear my records. Sure, that would be amazing. But if they don't, I'm not desperate for it. because I say what I mean to say with the records. And for the people who get it, those are the people who I do it for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good. We have time for another question.